Lads, we had to preview this fight. And this is the first of many live previews I will do. Probably do a solo preview after the weigh-in, because I find that, heavyweight weigh-ins, I like knowing what the guys weigh. But I wanted to preview this fight because a lot of people are interested in it. A lot of people are talking about it. I think it's going to be a great fight, and it's a decent undercard as well. And I needed two good mates who know boxing inside and out. But so I was going to say no boxing inside and out, and you do on short notice. No, I mean, I wanted two good mates who really know the sport. Joe Stunner boxing, Lee inside the distance. How are you two guys? My friends, how are you?
All good.
Joe Stunner have been on here a few times. People, we are trying to get you to 5K. You're only about 200 or so off. Lee, inside the distance, you've been on here before. But in case people aren't familiar, because when you were on here, I think this was just before. I think it was just before Fury versus Usyk, thereabouts.
Yeah.
For people who don't know, feel free to introduce yourself. Tell them about what you do. Inside the Distance is the name of the channel. It's a great channel, mind you. Lee, the floor is yours.
Yes, I am Inside the Distance. My name is Lee. I cover boxing while I'm here. Very much like Joe Stunner. Anything boxing related, even tenuously related, I will cover. No, I cover the stuff that takes an interest in me, something that sort of sparks a topic of conversation, cover all the big stuff, break stuff down, technical analysis, so on and so on. We are a boxing channel. That is us. That is me.
It's mad the way, we're kind of like, you think about it, like three different stages of the boxing kind of, I don't want to call it a career, because it's not really that. But like you Lee just starting out, we're trying to get him to 1,000. Joe Stunner 3 years ago, I was on 5K, or about to hit 5K thereabouts. And, not to toot my own horn, but, just gone over 20K, so I'm pretty pleased about that. If you think about it like that, 3 different stages of kind of this little adventure that we call boxing on YouTube. But one thing we all have in common, we all have a passion for boxing, we all have a love for boxing, and we're all keenly looking forward to this Saturday night's fight card. Lads, when you look at the card on paper, it's a 6-fight card, which is smaller than... The Saudi cards don't have, a 10-fight card or anything like that, but they normally have about, 7, 8 fights. This is slightly smaller. What do we think of this card in terms of the first, Saudi show that we've had kind of in the UK, and kind of compared to, say, Fury Usyk, Day of Reckoning, Joshua Ngannou, Matchroom Queensberry? How does this compare?
Joe?
Well, I would say it compares favourably because it is an event blockbuster type of card. It's got that. It's an all-British heavyweight clash, as we know. And they've put some good fights on the undercard that are probably not as flashy as the ones that have been on the previous Riyadh cards. They're ones that will appeal to, British, Irish fans. And it's not there isn't as much depth as before. But I think it's a good card. I mean, we can't always have, the Day of Reckoning or the 5 versus 5 or, those. We were getting spoiled, weren't we? Let's be honest. We sort of died.
Exactly.
So I think by any other standard, this is a very good card. And I'm just entirely relieved that it's a damn sight better, considering it's on pay-per-view and it's at Wembley Stadium, than Fury versus White. Does anyone remember that card, which was on pay-per-view? Probably the worst pay-per-view ever. Oh, Chisora, yeah.
I mean, that had if it wasn't for the fact that Dubois Lorena turned into a bit of a firefight, you could argue, and that was record price. Bear that in mind. Record UK price. It's something that I've noticed, that we see these Saudi shows get announced, and when I look at this undercard, it looks a good card to me, right? In comparison to, say, 2 years ago or 3 years ago.
I think there's a couple of factors that play into this card in its difference between this and the previous cards I've had. I think one, the fact that it's in the UK and the headline is so, it's been. There are so many people looking forward to the headline. Joshua V. Dubois is so big, and the fact that it's on UK soil. I do think, although it's a good undercard, you could call it almost a bit of a trade undercard compared to the stuff we've had previously. But I think the fact that it's in the UK means that they haven't quite had to go quite as far as they have with previous cards. And I think what Joe said is correct. You can't. There are only so many big names and big fights available to keep stacking on these cards. At some point, you're going to have to that guy fought last. That match has already been made. You can't do it every time, can you? And I think the fact it's in the UK and the headline is such a big headline, I think that's given a little bit of license to have a slightly less sort of spectacular undercard, shall we say?
Well, it's a UK card, isn't it?
Yeah.
The whole from top to bottom, it's all UK. And it's, as far as UK cards go, it's brilliant. I mean, okay, you've got Irishman in there, Cacace. I'm sure we're going to talk about him. You've got a Scotsman in Hutchinson, and lots of English fighters and so on. I don't think is there. Am I right in saying there isn't a foreigner on there? Foreigner in inverted commas on there?
I don't think so. I genuinely don't. No. Everyone on that card is British.
It's a shame that Eubank Sheeraz didn't come off.
Oh, that would have been amazing
for this card.
I was on the Proper podcast a couple of weeks ago, and we talked about something. And when I look at this card, I actually think that this kind of reads into this. As much as we love the Day of Reckoning, as much as we love the Fury versus Usyk, the match from Queensbury, we don't want fighters to neglect fighting on UK-only shows. So Nicky Ball has fought his last 2 fights on Saudi shows. He's fighting in Liverpool, defending his title. That's what we want. We don't want these fighters to miss fighting, say in Birmingham, in Liverpool, somewhere like that, because, I only want to fight in the Saudi shows. And if they keep doing, you can see the catch-20, if they keep doing these blockbuster Saudi shows and holding all, your Nicky Balls, your, Hamza Sheeraz, people like that, if you keep them all locked up and you're only going to fight on these Saudi shows, where are the UK shows? Where are the standard DAZN? Where are the standard TNT shows going to happen? And I think with this card, we're starting to see that, okay, they're being a little bit more, it's not a bad card, it's a good card, but we're seeing a little bit more kind of realism with these fights. We're seeing good fights, we're seeing good names, but we're not seeing as many big fights. But on the contrary, look at the end of the year, we have a lot more UK shows from Boxer, Queensbury and Matchroom. So I think that's a fair trade.
Yeah.
I think that's a fair trade. And I think
also as well, shows, when you had the first Riyadh season cards, to make the impact and make the sort of explosion onto the scene in the boxing world that they did, they kind of had to produce these almost unbelievable cards. Now they're in, now the foot is in the door. Now everyone knows the money on offer to be on a Riyadh season event is there. They kind of don't have to try so hard, do they? The cards, they're not trying to sell us this idea anymore. We're sold on the idea. Now that the level can sort of, plateau a little bit.
Well, also, if you compare this to, I was thinking the other day about this, what you just said. Compare it to, say, DAZN when DAZN started up. DAZN was going to kick pay-per-view into the dust, and it was $1.99 to subscribe.
Oh, remember those days?
Now look at the state of it. All right, so anybody at number one, you've got to speculate to accumulate, as they say, as the cliche goes in business. And number two, anyone who believes anything that comes out of the mouth of a corporate executive is living in the land of the pixies and the fairies, because that don't last. So that whole blockbuster international card thing, yeah, like Lee said, it was going to shunt in this new era, but ultimately it has to sort of plateau out.
Also the thing as well, I think a lot of people are not too unhappy at the fact they have to pay pay-per-view for these kind of events. I think what's more kind of annoying is the fact that if you go back to Canelo Belanga at the weekend, in the UK, we're charged 20 quid for that. I think that's more of a bit of an insult.
And unsociable time. Lads, as I always do, we always read out the super chats. So thank you, Adam, for the 5 quid. 5 quid, every little bit helps. I will thank you from the bottom of my heart for that. Lads, let's not get ahead of yous. But Dubois does it, in my opinion. I think the Youth and Desire will come true. This is the biggest puncher AJ has faced. I don't disagree with him on the biggest puncher. I definitely think since Klitschko, this is arguably the biggest. We'll touch on Dubois versus Joshua in a bit, but Lee wants to add something?
One thing I'd just say, I've heard this has been said all week that this is the big puncher Joshua has faced possibly since Vladimir Klitschko. Now, I know people will scoff at the idea, but if we're going to just talk about in terms of a big puncher, is Daniel Dubois a bigger puncher than Francis Ngannou?
How can we really? In, that's the big question, I guess. But in terms of Queensbury, someone who has the punching technique, like Francis
Yes,
Ngannou
100%.
is
Yeah.
someone who, and Dave
Yeah.
Allen summed it up best. Dave Allen talked in a video, a very good video, about both guys' punching power, and he said, if you got a heavy bag and you gave Joshua and Dubois a free shot at it, in his opinion, Dubois would hit it harder.
Yeah.
But that means nothing in a fight.
Yeah.
It means nothing. And as he said, he'd rather have sharpness than punching power, because as he said, if I have a big puncher who's slow and he's clubbing, I just get out of the way. But if you're sharp, you are just seeing, you're not seeing those shots. It's just pop, 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 pop. And that's what Joshua is. It was actually Dave Allen. I got to give him big credit, because his channel is honestly, it's phenomenal, isn't it? The insight he gives, but Adam gets a super like on that £5 chat. Thank you so much, my friend. Lads, we got to get in, because we got to talk about Dubois Joshua, but we can't not talk about the card. Let's go from top to bottom, the way BoxRec, in their infinite wisdom, don't mention the WBA, have on, yes, they don't rate the WBA as a title anymore. So if you're fighting for the WBA, that doesn't come up on BoxRec, which makes no sense.
But they do the IBO.
Oh yeah, but they do the, hang on a minute. Don't discredit the good IBO and think of all the fights that have happened for that prestigious title, you know. Anyway, Mark Chamberlain versus Josh Padley, right? Let's start with that. That is Turkey Al-Sheikh's favourite fighter, despite the fact he's never seen him fight live. But he is, again, favourite fighter. Where is he? Where's Turkey? He's going in there against Josh Padley. Now, a fighter from Yorkshire, from Armthorpe in Yorkshire, 28 years old. I have to say, for my sins, I've never seen Josh Padley. Are either of you guys familiar with him? Have you seen him fight?
I've seen him a couple of times.
In your opinion, what are we looking at here?
Well, he's undefeated in 14, and I think he's got about 4 KOs. But did I see him on one of those straight to YouTube live things? I think he fought Jimmy First.
He did, yeah.
Who is about 50 years old, and he beat him on points, I think.
He was the first. He was the first to beat Jimmy First, so that's a first.
That is a first, yeah.
That is a first.
But I'm sure I've seen him against someone else. No, he undefeated guy, decent domestic level, but I fully expect Chamberlain to knock him out.
I was going to say, Chamberlain has been in there with the likes of Gavin Gwynn, and Gavin Gwynn is a fighter who was operated at a European level, so surely, without the greatest respect to Josh Padley, surely someone like that will be a far more formidable test, and he came through it, than someone like a Josh Padley. But he does come in undefeated with a lot of desire, so it could be interesting. I like what I'm seeing from Mark Chamberlain. He seems a big puncher. I think that there's fights there for him to be made at domestic level, certainly at lightweight, against the likes of Sam Noakes. I mean, they're both won by Frank Warren. I don't see why that fight can't happen, because Sam Noakes is arguably just as exciting and as impressive. So I like what I'm seeing from Chamberlain, but that's kind of that's going to kick things off. Now, we're going to go by BoxRec here. So the next fight, I would imagine it won't be in this order on fight night, but the next fight on BoxRec is Joshua Buatsi, Willie Hutchinson. Now, we're into the business end. What do you guys think and make of that fight?
Lee?
See, when it comes to Willie Hutchinson, okay, we take the fantastic amateur career into account, but I'm not sure if the win over Craig Richards was a little bit flattering on the fact that Craig Richards, for me, just didn't really turn up, did he?
No.
Also, when Buatsi fought Aziz, I thought Aziz kind of gave him quite an easy night as well. There were a lot of opportunities in that fight where Aziz got himself on the inside into position, but just didn't seem to have enough ability to let his hands go when he was in the positions where he should have. So it's quite difficult to pick this one, because I think in a way they've both been a little bit flattered by previous performances.
Joe, what are your thoughts on this?
Well, I picked Buatsi to win by a late stoppage. I think I picked the 11th round or something. I think Hutchinson has got good skills, which you would expect from someone who's had a good amateur career. I think the stoppage down at super middleweight could have been an aberration. Yeah, Lennox Clark, yeah. I mean, I watched that fight again recently, a couple of weeks ago, whatever. But I thought Hutchinson wasn't doing too badly. It could have been the weight as well, and because he does seem to be more of a 175 pounder. There wasn't any fat on him when you looked at him against Spider. But I do think that Lee might be right about Spider, because Spider is a hot and cold fighter anyway, and perhaps the event got to him a little bit. I don't know, maybe.
You know, anyone who watched that saw Spider Richards didn't really put up much of an opposition, did he? In all honesty,
No.
you only have to call what you see, and on the night, Craig Richards wasn't really there.
No, he certainly wasn't. That wasn't the Craig Richards who, even in defeat, had looked pretty good. Like again, like when he fought Buatsi, he lost, but like that Craig Richards, I mean, he would have caused really Hutchinson serious issues. And in there, it was just like a real flat performance. It was honestly, it was bizarre watching Craig Richards look like that. Willie Hutchinson, I remember having a beer with Rob Tebbert talking about the Lennox Clark fight, and in his opinion, Willie Hutchinson didn't have his man strength at all. He was only in his very early 20s in that fight, and even though he's moved up in weight, it was really man against boy. You know, you might be struggling to make 168, but you might not have the strength of someone like a Lennox Clark, who was a lot bigger, a lot older. So he was of the opinion that the Craig Richards fight would be close, when I thought it would be not really close at all. I thought Craig Richards would win it, would walk it. I feel this fight will be competitive, but like Joe said, I cannot see another than a Joshua Buatsi win.
I'm always still like amazed at how big Buatsi looks as well for the weight.
Yeah. I remember him when he was an amateur. He was fighting at 100, in the amateurs of 178, and normally that's kind of an indication that he's going to come down in weight, but he didn't. So I was thinking, well, he must not be that big. And then you see him, and you're like, holy crap, this guy is massive. How the hell did you make 175 as an amateur, if that's the case? So Buatsi is huge, but lackluster over the last couple of years, to say the least. Some have speculated that it could be to do with jet lag. You think that plays a factor?
Jet lag?
Coming from America, Virgil Hunter, maybe he's one of these fighters who, no matter how often he's gone over, he just cannot get used, cannot acclimatise to it. Because
he's been with Hunter for a long time now, so you think they factor that into his preparation. I mean, what is he now, 30, 31, something like that?
Oh, he's well in his 30s now, 31, 32.
Okay. As you get older into your 30s, it's a bit more difficult to take weight off. You can still make the weight, but are you making it healthily and retaining all your energy and your that may be a factor. I do expect him to beat Hutchinson. Like I said, stop him late. I think Hutchinson will give him problems. Someone in the comments of my preview video said that Hutchinson reminds him a little bit of Billy Joe Saunders. He's got that sort of, you know, he can mess you around, he can pinch rounds off you, and maybe not stylistically, but he's got that ability to sort of pinch rounds.
I just go back to seeing Hutchinson in the Richards fight, and Hutchinson did, even though he sort of kept on his toes and kept that awkward sort of style, towards the end you did notice a drop in energy. And I just think if you have him in there against someone who's actually pushing him and forcing the fight, I think the outcome changes dramatically.
There were moments in that fight where, as you said, I did notice he was slowing down, and I thought if Craig Richards stepped on the gas then, could have been really interesting. In terms of predictions, I think we're all in unanimous agreement. We're going with Joshua Buatsi win this fight.
Yeah.
Next fight on the undercard is a bit of a strange one. So, Ishmael Davis versus Josh Kelly was meant to be Liam Smith. Now, we've seen fighters like Frank Sanchez go on these Saudi shows with one leg, literally with one leg, clearly injured. They weren't turning down that payday. Liam Smith did. Liam Smith was sick, so he said he couldn't fight. Now, this is a strange one for me, because I saw no shortage of fighters on social media say, I'll hop in. Is that because they see Josh Kelly as so beatable, or they just want that Saudi payday?
I think there's a bit of both. I don't think, if we're honest, Josh Kelly has ever been the same since Avanesian, has he?
No.
So I think both of those factors are true.
In terms of Ishmael Davis, now I've been impressed by him. He very limited amateur background, very limited. In fact, hardly any. But I like what I've seen. He got a win over Troy Williamson last time out. Troy Williamson, former British champion, knocked out Ted Cheeseman, was fairly comprehensively beaten. Wasn't beaten up by Josh Kelly, but was just completely outboxed in their fight 2 years ago. The fight he had against Davis was a bit more competitive, but it was still, there was no disputing who won that fight. Do we think he has any real chance against Josh Kelly, especially on 7 days' notice? It is a different style for Josh Kelly compared to the pressure fighter that Liam Smith is.
I think he's got a chance. I mean, it's a 12-round fight, not a 10-round fight, which is important.
Very
because
important.
With Josh Kelly, he is both difficult to beat and easy-ish to beat, depending on the style.
I mean, for me, when this was Kelly versus Smith, I leant towards Kelly because I think Smith is shot, if I'm honest.
So do I. You were saying something about Kelly, though, not being the same since Avanesian. It seemed like when Avanesian beat him, all that, because he still fights the same with that flashy style, but all that kind of confidence he had, he doesn't seem to have that same mojo since then.
This is what I meant by him being easy-ish to beat, but also difficult to beat. Because if you let him do all that flash and dash stuff, and you just sort of plod after him, you're not getting anywhere, which is what Williamson essentially did. Now, if you can put it on him and make him fight at a pace he don't like and rough him up and maybe throw in a few of the dark arts over a 12-round fight, that's 36 minutes of fighting. That's a long time to be able to stay out of trouble. And I do get the feeling if you put the heat on Kelly, he can unravel. He's done things particularly, I think he's a little bit brittle.
It didn't take him long to unravel against Avanesian. Like, he literally started off great. Avanesian put it on him, and then it was just like, boom, done. I've unraveled. It was like, what the? He didn't do much. Yeah.
Yeah, and I don't know whether Davis can do this because it's a short notice thing, but I thought he looked pretty good against Williamson because
Is this the first time Kelly's boxed at this weight? Am I right in thinking that?
No.
154? No. He's won British titles at this weight. He's been fighting at this weight pretty much since the Avanesian loss.
Who am I thinking of then? Yeah, scratch that.
I think he's probably settled into the weight. He's still got Adam Booth in the corner, he has, hasn't
he? Yes, unfortunately.
Yeah, well...
I like Adam Booth. I have a lot of time for Adam Booth. But you've been pretty much... To make Adam Booth style work, you need to have so many attributes to your game that if you don't have them all, it just won't work. Simple as that. And Josh Kelly doesn't have the power or the arm length to make Adam Booth style work. Grant Smith would be a better trainer.
Yeah. He strikes me, Kelly, as being... He's one of those boxers who's more of an athlete than a fighter, if you know what I mean.
Yeah.
And if you put him under the cosh, you can break him. And again, I keep repeating this, but 12 rounds. If it was 10 rounder, I might pick Kelly. I'm still going to pick him, but with a lot less confidence because 12 rounds, those extra 2 rounds can make all the difference.
One thing about Kelly, I remember Conor Benn years ago in an IFL interview, would have been about 2019. So Conor Benn back then was seen as just kind of a, not even a prospect, right? And I remember there was kind of, Eddie Hearn was mentioning Kelly Benn, and Conor Benn, to his credit, was all like, look, I'll fight anybody. And I remember Conor Benn saying that Kelly kind of weirded him out in a roundabout way when they met, in a sense of when he spoke to Kelly, it was like Josh Kelly was seeing himself almost as kind of like a god, where it's like, you can't get in the way of what I have to achieve. Something weird. Like, he didn't speak to Conor Benn kind of just like, hey, we'll talk. He said he spoke in a real weird way, and like, you're not part of my legacy. And Conor Benn was like, what? And like, Conor Benn was talking about it, I was kind of like, yeah, that is a bit weird. So he probably saw himself as something, because Adam Booth was really gassed about him. And then for him to lose, I mean, I wonder, I'd say his whole world fell apart after that. And yeah, he's had some good wins in terms of Troy Williamson, but saying that Williamson's lost to Kevin and Jago and Davis since then.
Yeah. I think Kelly is, from what you were saying, perhaps his ego got the better of him. Perhaps he was delusional. I mean, he's still quite a youngish fella.
Yeah, he's not even 30 yet, I don't think, anyway.
I think when you look at him, he's got all the talent in the world, but as we know, talent alone isn't enough, is it?
No. It's certainly, you can have all the talent. Roy Jones had more talent than Bernard Hopkins. No one's debating that. But who had the longevity? Bernard Hopkins. And Bernard Hopkins, the fact that he wasn't as talented, but he was able to hone his skills, hone his game. Oldest world champion in boxing history.
But that's because one of the reasons is because Hopkins had the fundamentals down well. Jones was
as we said, if you had someone and you said, right, I'm going to teach you about boxing, you would never show him Roy Jones. You would say, no, do not look at that.
Plus, as well, Hopkins kept consistent with his weight.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, very good.
Yeah,
that's a good point.
Middleweight. I mean, I remember Emmanuel Stewart saying he runs too much. That's why he can still make middleweight, but that's why he needs to move up at the same time.
Well, when he was in his 40s, he was saying, I'll come down to 154 to fight Mayweather.
I remember that, yeah. And he was serious about that.
Yeah, he's deadly serious about it. He said, I'll lose a pound a month or whatever it was, he said, and I'll come down to 154 and fight you. That takes discipline.
That takes discipline that we don't see nowadays. In terms of Kelly Davis, I'm going to go first and say, I think Kelly will win in a tricky fight on points. Legit. What about you guys?
I think Kelly wins.
I think Kelly wins.
Points. Yeah, I'll go for points.
Would any of us be shocked if there's an upset?
Not really.
Not really.
No, I could see Davis winning. I think the 7 days notice is probably a little. If it was a full camp, we'd really have to think about this fight. We really would. Next fight.
Sorry, I'm just. You can make that to your advantage as well, because there's 7 days notice for Kelly. If Davis was in a camp, okay, he's got to adjust and to the style and everything, the tactics and so on and so forth. But so is Kelly, because I mean Davis is a lot more like Liam Smith than whoever it was that Davis was originally going to fight. Kelly, there aren't many people who fight like Kelly, but I wouldn't rule Davis out at all.
No, neither would I. I wouldn't rule him out in the slightest. We have a world title fight for the prestigious IBO title. So there you go. Now we can name an IBO fight. It's only for the IBO. It's only for the IBO title. The IBF title is not on the line. Thank God for that. Should never have been on the line. Anthony Cacace versus Josh Warrington. What do we think about this? Anthony Cacace coming off a win over Joe Cordina. Good win. Good performance. Going in there against Josh Warrington, back-to-back losses. And one of them was a KO loss.
Well, Carl Frampton said an interesting thing, didn't he? Carl Frampton said that Josh Warrington was the hardest punch he's ever faced in a fight, or the hardest punch he's ever taken in a fight. But Cacace was the hardest he's ever been hit in a spar. I thought, which was an interesting comment.
That is interesting. I've heard Carl Frampton mention that in the past about Cacace, that he is a very, very big puncher. Josh Warrington is someone who, it's weird, when he was hurting the likes of Carl Frampton, he really started to believe that he was a big puncher. And I think that got the better of him. The little bit of puncher's arrogance got the better of him. And he has since been, I want to say, brought down to earth. He's fighting at 130 against the big puncher, coming off all the confidence in the world. And it's not just 2 back-to-back defeats. It's the fight. It's the hard fights he's had before them. It's the Lara fight, the first fight, which was devastating. That was a brutal fight. It's some of the hard, think of Josh Warren. He is someone who has to throw so many punches around to keep these guys off him. He's in his mid-30s now. Surely he can't go to the well one more time. And especially when you consider he went to the well against Lee Wood. He was winning, and he still got knocked out.
Yeah, if you look at both their records, I think they've both got 8 KOs on their.
Yes, they do.
Which suggests they don't punch hard at all, and yet it's a sort of an anomaly, isn't it? They both seem to hit a lot harder than their records suggest. I think Warrington, first fight at 130, did he stay at featherweight a little bit too long? Did that affect his punch resistance? Probably not. I mean, Lee Wood hits really hard. Cacace, I think Cacace, because he had that stop-start career where he had periods where he just, like entire years where he wasn't fighting, we were thinking, he's kind of wasting his talent or he's not getting the opportunities. But sometimes that can work in your favour once you get to your mid-30s. If you're getting the chances, you're well preserved.
Mm-hmm. I was watching the public workouts earlier, and Josh Warrington did say that as they always do, I feel reborn that I've moved up and I should have done it sooner. You know, all the usual spiel about moving up, but who knows?
I think this fight is just tailor-made for Cacace to look good in. And this is probably a kind of last, well done, Josh. You've been great for Matchroom. You've given us some good nights, but this is the kind of the farewell. And if anyone should have got this fight, it should be Lee Wood, because I think he is deserving of a title shot, moving up to 130, because he was winning. Let's be honest, he was winning. I can't see how Josh Warrington gets through the mid-rounds in this fight. I think that he was looking... The fight he had against Kiko flattered a lot of us, because Kiko had seen better days. He gets beaten by Luis Alberto Lopez, and he had to foul his way back into that fight, and then gives everything against Lee Wood, and ultimately still gets taken out. I can't... and then you go into... You want to go back further, Lara. I can't see how he wins this fight, and I can't see how this fight goes any more than, say, 5-6 rounds.
It's hard to get the visions of Warrington's losses and some of the brutal losses he's had out of your mind.
And I think that had he not failed, with Lopez, he probably, if he didn't fail his way back into that fight, he may very well have got stopped as well. And I think that took the low blows, the headbutts. I think they actually took a lot out of Lopez. And probably, one, it got Warrington back into the fight, and it also helped take out or slowed Lopez down.
I think Cacace wins this. I'm going to go with the 8th round. Just top of my head. I think Warrington's a warrior. Maybe the higher weight will give him a bit more punch resistance if he was struggling at featherweight. But Cacace is, I think, a career super feather. Big guy. You saw what he did to Cordina. Manhandled him. Was very physically strong in the clinches. I think he stops Warrington in about 8 rounds.
Lee? We're going with the same.
Yeah. I mean, I really rated Cordina as a fighter, and so that was a great win. And I just, you know, when you've lost that many times, losing is a lot easier. The more you lose, losing gets easier, doesn't it? And I just, like Joe said, you know, a career at the weight against someone coming up with the losses on the record and everything else, it's hard to see past anything other than Cacace. Mid-round. In what will be a really entertaining firefight, probably up to that point.
That's the one thing. I cannot see a boring fight in this fight. In spite of what we all may think, we're all being real boring. No one's going against the grapevine. But in terms of a fight, I think we're going to have a fun fight, but a fight in which, it's going to be a win for Cacace. We're all in unanimous agreement with that one. Co-main, and I do believe this will be the co-main. Tyler Denny versus Hamza Sheeraz, EBU title is on the line. Before we get into this fight, I've said it once, I'll say it again. How much can we big Tyler Denny up? This is a guy who, I believe he lost to Linus Adofia for an English title, if I'm not mistaken, a couple of years ago in the York Hall. He's now European champion in co-main eventing at Wembley Stadium. I mean, just learn from those losses, pick yourself up, improve, and look what's happened.
He got stopped by Reece Cartwright about 6 years ago. And then was it on points to Udofia?
Yeah, points he lost, yeah.
Right, so and then he's rebuilt his career. He had a couple of fights with River Wilson Bent, who's
he was brought in as the away fighter against Bradley Ray to lose, and he didn't. And he was brought in again, and then he was headlining, and then he was kind of brought in probably as well, more so as kind of because Ben Shalom is seemingly unwilling to let some of his fighters fight on other platforms. Didn't seem to have a problem with Tyler Denny fighting Felix Cash, and he goes in there and he really beat up Felix Cash. He really beat him up.
And Brad Pauls was undefeated when he beat him.
He was.
So I think this guy's earned that EBU title. I've got a lot of respect for that. Having said that, what is he now? 32, 33, early 30s, mid 30s. Against Sheeraz, who is enormous for the weight. I mean, scarily big for the weight. Was he 6'3" and he looks more like a super middle.
A big super middle at that.
Yeah. I think it's a bit too much for Denny, because Sheeraz was shaken a little bit in the first round against Amar Williams. And Denny, I would say, if Sheeraz was in against a big, like an unfancied fighter who had a big punch, I wouldn't be ruling him out. But Denny's only got 1 KO in 19 wins. So it doesn't bode well for being having a big equaliser, you know what I mean?
He has been dropping guys, though. So I think in terms of, he's not getting rid of them, but he's hitting them hard enough to drop them. Like he dropped Felix Cash. So I think there is a bit of power there, but you're right. I think that the size and the fact is that Hamza Sheeraz is coming into this fight off a good run of form as well. First round knockout win over Liam Williams. Fights Ammo Williams, the American coming over to the UK. They always seem to win, and then this time he gets completely annihilated and stopped in 10. I think that Hamza Sheeraz, the form guide, everything is in his favour. And I just think that as much as I have so much respect for Tyler Denny, I think he's tremendous, that I can't see him getting through this fight.
Yeah.
I think it's going to be a stoppage win again for Hamza Sheeraz. Possibly a point, because I think Denny might be able to bite down on the gum shield and make a go of it. But I can't see how anything other than Hamza Sheeraz win in this fight.
I think Sheeraz stops him in about 6. But he's going to go out on his shield, Denny. Like, tremendously spirited warrior. A lot of respect for him, but he's, size matters. Big.
I know. Ask someone's wife that, and they'll tell you.
Oh well, yeah, you know what I
mean. He picks the greatest word: size matters. Too flipping right, it does.
Walked into that one, didn't I?
They're lying if they tell you otherwise. But yeah, no, I agree. Lee, what we think for this fight?
Yeah, I just think with Sheeraz, I mean, he's on his way to being tracked to a world title. He is one of sort of our up and coming stars, isn't he? So they really don't want to risk him. And if you haven't got really damaging power and you're fighting a guy that has got power and he's big and he's long, he's in the mold of a Thomas Hearns, isn't he? He's big and he's long and he carries power. So he poses you so many problems. And I just don't think Tyler Denny has got enough to come anywhere near to overcome Hamza Sheeraz. Saying that, I do think I wouldn't say Hamza Sheeraz that we're 100% that he's certified yet, that, he's the real deal. He's still got a lot to prove. But I think at this level, I think he's got far more tools in his box.
Does anyone remember that fight a couple of years ago against Bradley Skeet?
I was going to mention it. Yeah.
Bradley Skeet was winning the fight.
Yes,
and Sheeraz was flipping lucky he didn't get DQ'd. Very lucky.
Yeah, he was. He should have been disqualified, really. But that was, 3-4 years ago? But
3 years. I think it was 21.
Yeah, about 21. I mean, okay, it's a learning curve. But yeah, there was a little few shoots of hope for Denny there. Although Denny don't box as well as Skeet. Skeet was a very slick boxer.
He was, but Bradley Skeet had 2, and that was a few years beforehand, had 2 very bad knockout losses early as well. So it wasn't like he was meeting a Bradley Skeet who was at the peak of his power, where it was like the boxer meets the puncher. This is a Bradley Skeet who had seen better days years prior.
Yeah, you're right.
So I think we look at the recent performances of Hamza Sheeraz and we've been like, oh wow, it's impressive. And it is, don't get me wrong, it is. But he does have flaws, as every fighter does. And you look at that and you think, well, hang on a minute, if an over-the-hill Bradley Skeet can do that, and again, I think Hamza Sheeraz should be thanking everyone under the sun that he wasn't DQ'd in that, because he really should have been. He got lucky. He got lucky there.
I think what we're saying is he's not the finished article.
No, far from it.
Is certainly there because he's in his mid 24, 25, 26, that sort of mid 20s. So he's got plenty of time, but he's not quite the finished article. And at 6'3", he's going to move up at some point.
I think the thing is, Joe, in the way the game is today, you say he's got plenty of time. He won't be given plenty of time, will he? He'll be fast tracked to a world title.
But you see, this is the thing that a lot of people overlook is that if you've got a guy who's that big for the weight, if he wins that world title, which is feasible, he could do it. It's a pretty dire division at the moment in the middles. But if he then gets that belt and he hangs on to it, so he keeps boiling himself down to the weight because he's got this money making trinket that he can use when he should be moving up to 168 because his body's just growing. So I think there is a lot to be said for putting the brakes on sometime. Not so someone goes stale, but just so that you bring them along at the right time, you let them mature. Yeah.
We're all going with Hamza Sheeraz to win this fight. Knockout, points?
Knockout.
Lee?
Stoppage.
Yeah, either or. I mean, yeah.
I'm going to go points. I'm going to say Denny gets dropped a couple of times, but sees the fight out. If I'm wrong, I'm wrong.
I hope you're right.
I'd like to say, first of all, I'd like, as long as it doesn't take too bad a beat, then I'd like to see him go the distance. At least he can say, right, look, I've done what other people couldn't do. We move on to the main event. Anthony Joshua, Daniel Dubois.
Who?
Daniel Dubois. Every baby has a daddy. I'm going to beat you like I'm your daddy. Didn't matter what Miller said. He was just, I said it. Look what I did. I said it. Yeah, he was so proud. How can anyone not like Daniel Dubois? Honestly. So
the greatest thing about that moment was how happy Miller was. He's
like, good one, Daniel.
I love the way like he made it as soon as Dev Sandy said that. He's like, wait, big baby. Every baby has a daddy. And I'm gonna beat you like I'm your daddy. And he asked him, what's up? Oh, that was honestly Daniel Dubois, whatever you want to say, you cannot not like this guy. He's hilarious unintentionally.
Good.
Like that was just phenomenal. It really was. Now Daniel Dubois, Anthony Joshua. I just done a video where I was watching Hatman's video today, and he was talking about even TNT are picking against him. And I done a video saying that it's not just TNT; it's even people who like Simon Jordan, a man who is picking Fury to win the rematch against Usyk based upon nothing. And he even says it himself, based upon nothing. He still picks Anthony Joshua to beat Daniel Dubois. So there is a lot. I mean, the majority. Anyone listening to, we just say boxing experts in the media, they're all picking Joshua. You wouldn't believe that this fight is a mismatch because so many people are picking against Daniel Dubois. He is not Charles Martin. He's a lot better than Charles Martin as a champion. Do we give him a chance in this fight, or are we?
100%. Yeah. First of all, if Simon Jordan picked me to win anything, I'd be very concerned. But I think with regard to, Dubois can win. He bangs like hell. I mean, he's a hard hitter. The question is, has he got the skills, the tools to match Joshua's skills and tools?
The thing with this fight is, it's like, I think the majority of the sort of the media are picking Anthony Joshua, but at the same time, none of them would be at all surprised if Daniel Dubois did win. It's one of those kind of fights. And I think if you look at a lot of the comments on a lot of channels, there are more fans picking Dubois than more media are picking Dubois.
Do you think that low key in the media, they are picking Anthony Joshua to win because the media, because we all know if it did happen, people like us on YouTube, we would absolutely lap it up as well. They want Joshua to win in the hope that Fury beats Usyk because it's a bigger fight. But regardless, if Joshua wins, it pretty much means that if Fury wants to stick around, we will get a Joshua Fury fight, win or lose against Usyk. So that's why. It's like they can see what's in the distance and we're close to it. Whether he beats Usyk or not, they'll make the fight. So they're saying, Joshua, please win. Because if Dubois wins, we're never going to see Fury Joshua. It's as simple as that.
I mean, the roadmap, if Dubois wins, surely it would be immediate rematch.
Is it contract?
I'm not sure, but I'm assuming that's got to be in there somewhere. There's no way Hearn would risk Joshua being on the verge of 3-time and then possibly undisputed without having some sort of safety net in there.
The interesting thing is, though, this is a voluntary for Dubois, so if anyone should have a rematch clause, it should be Dubois.
Oh, yeah, both. But that's what I mean. The roadmap, whichever way the result, well, if Joshua wins, Joshua moves on. If Joshua loses, immediate rematch. That's how I see it. I don't know if that's how you see it as well.
Just as an aside, this Joshua versus Fury thing, I think, is past its sell-by date anyway. I'm not saying I wouldn't watch it. I'm not saying it couldn't provide some entertainment, but I certainly think if Fury loses again to Usyk, then he really is looking like damaged goods. Because
that fight is then meaningless other than just bragging rights amongst fans. Really,
I agree 100%. If Joshua wins and Fury loses, for me, the fight has lost something. It has. It definitely. Now, I will still watch it. I'll still do videos for it. I'll cover it to death more than likely. That's what we do here. But yes, it won't have the same appeal as it would be if it was for Undisputed. But if you go to if you go to a pub on a Saturday night and someone is just even mentioning Tyson Fury or Anthony Joshua, they don't give a damn if Fury loses twice to Usyk. If you say Fury Joshua, they'll be like, I really want to see it. Oh, I think Joshua wins. No, I think Fury wins.
Yeah.
The average casual will still lap it up. It won't have the same appeal as if it had been undisputed heavyweight championship of the world.
I think for me personally, I think the fact and the style of Fury's defeat to Usyk has damaged and devalued that already. Even regardless of if he, what happens in the rematch. I think the way that Fury lost, that to me has kind of almost made the Fury Joshua fight kind of like, as Joe said, I watch it. Does it really mean it? Am I to clamour for it now? Not really.
Well, if he beats Usyk in the rematch, then I suppose the argument will be made. Well, he's gained revenge, which is something that really pisses me off. Because if you've got one win for each guy, then the logical thing is to have a decider, which has gone out the window. The old trilogy thing has gone out the window. The days of Barrera and Morales and whoever else you want to mention. Forget about that. No, he got his revenge. Well, hang on a minute, it's one each. But at least they'll be able to say, Josh Fury has resurrected himself, so stick him in with Joshua.
Yeah, because at this point, Joshua's rebuilt. Fury has yet to rebuild.
Yeah. But it'll be intriguing. I'd watch it. Anyway, we're supposed to be talking about Dubois, aren't we?
Yeah, but I'm happy to talk about this fight.
I brought the subject that was my motive.
Brought the subject up, but I was the one who said, is it wishful thinking from the media personnel? But you're right, though. I have seen people, the average fan, kind of say, no, I give Dubois a chance. And again, I go back to someone who, he hasn't fought them, but he shared the ring and sparred both of them. And Dave Allen has said that he is more impressed with Anthony Joshua. He thinks that he's the sharper puncher. He'd rather have Joshua's attributes, but Dubois is the harder puncher. And I think that Joshua, Dubois, the only thing he's really said, because he's a man of few words, as we all know, that he was careful matchmaking with Anthony Joshua. And you could definitely make the case that it has been. That was what CBS was saying about Richard Riakporn in their fight. Because I know it's different, yes, but a lot of people were saying, Riakporn beats Bill Smith. Bill Smith was saying, not really, it's careful matchmaking. And it was. And could it be the case with Joshua? I mean, he fought Francis Ngannou. That is what Tyson Fury should have done. And Joshua being Joshua, he takes these fights serious. That was what Fury should have done. Joshua did it. He fought out of the lane.
In my prediction video today, I kind of disagree with that a little bit because I don't think Fury, A, hits hard enough, or B, has the ability to do that to Francis Ngannou. I know everyone jumps on and says, oh, but Joshua, that's what Fury should have done. That's not special. He's just done what Fury should have. I don't think Fury was good enough ever to do that to Francis Ngannou.
You would have expected Fury to win every round with
exactly,
but
never dispatch him in that fashion.
Yeah. So it's horses for courses. It's the old styles make fights thing.
And Fury, for me, did near enough win easily the large majority of the rounds, didn't he?
Clearly won that.
Looked awful doing it, but
he couldn't have made that fight look any harder if he tried. He really made that fight look terribly hard. And Anthony Joshua couldn't have put a foot wrong. With Ben Davison, I love what I'm seeing. I mean, Joshua's been talking about and bigging up Ben Davison a lot. And I'm seeing someone who he's not trying. It's like, have you ever heard chefs talk about food? They don't try. If they get a dish, they just try and refine it. They work on the strengths of the dish and they just try and make it as good as can be. They don't try and add things unnecessary to it because you're just taking away. And it seems like that's what Ben Davison has done. He's looked at Joshua. He's decided, right, this is what makes you good. This is what I'm going to focus on. We're going to refine this. And people are saying he's hitting harder. And I agree. I think he is. I look at the punching power Joshua's shown. He looks really good.
Well, there's also the huge issue of Joshua's psyche, which is that Davison is someone who Joshua's an overthinker. So Davison has taken that burden off him because he's a very analytical, cerebral trainer. And he said, don't worry about all that stuff. I'll deal with that. And I'll tell you why I'll deal with it. And Joshua's listened and said, okay, that makes sense. Now then, Davison will say, okay, well, you need to do this, this, and this. And I think the balance between the power, which we all know Joshua's got, and the boxing skills and pacing yourself, and he's an aggressive fighter still, but he counterpunches a lot more. You know, he's a very, very good counterpuncher, Joshua. And whereas with Daniel, okay, he hits like a truck, but does he really have any kind of? He's very cavalier. You know, against Hrgović, he was storming in with his huge gap in his guard, and you're going to do that against Joshua. Oh, good luck with that.
I've watched the Hrgović fight back several times, and I still can't get over how many shots he took early on from Hrgović. And I just look at that and I just think, if you let Joshua do that. Now, fair enough, Hrgović was someone who he didn't need to settle in himself. He just was like, all right, you want to play this game, I'll play it. I don't think Joshua will be as likely to do that early on if Dubois sets a good pace. So he might actually be a little bit more cautious than Hrgović was. But ultimately, if he starts letting bombs go, I mean, Dubois is going to know all about it. And he's going to know all about it early on.
And Dubois also might resort to a little bit of putting the head on him. A few of the dark arts again. But I think Davison is the type of trainer who would have prepared for that as well. He'll keep Joshua on the straight and narrow and make sure he remains cool, even if he gets cut or whatever. I think it wouldn't surprise me if this is a type of fight where I say with confidence that Joshua is going to win by knockout.
Likewise.
However, I wouldn't be that surprised if Dubois landed a Hail Mary punch and knocked Joshua out. There's always that equalizer with Dubois. But in terms of skills and mixing the power in with the technique and everything, I got to go with Joshua.
Agree, Lee?
Yeah, totally. No, me and Joe have had this conversation quite a lot. And the meeting with Ben Davison, if you go back and you take Joshua from Garcia to Derek James. There was no difference. There was no improvement whatsoever for me. You went to the Helenius fight, and that was probably Joshua, probably one of his worst performances. Yeah. I would say, other than the highlight reel knockout. But there was no improvement at all from McCracken from Garcia to James. And then all of a sudden you get to Davison, and it's like black and white, night and day. As me and Joe discussed this before, what he has done is, the problem with Joshua up to this point was he had doubts, and those doubts led to a massive overthinking and over-analysis problem. And Ben Davison has come along and he's took all that away because he's done it all for him. And I kind of said in my prediction, it's almost like Ben Davison he's done the thinking, he's loaded it onto a memory stick, he stuck the memory stick in the back of Joshua's head, and Joshua now does all the thinking is done for him, and all he has to go out to do now is follow the instruction. And he's got the confidence in Davison. He's got, all the belief in the world, and the team looks like a match made in heaven. And I said this with it was the second knockdown of Ngannou, and people said, "Oh, no, it's only Ngannou. It doesn't mean nothing." And it was the way in which he did it. It was the way in which, if we go back to sort of the second Ruiz fight, Helenius, in which he stood off for a lot of that fight, the only jeopardy posed by Francis Ngannou was the massive punch. He didn't have any boxing skills. He was a novice. He'd come from MMA. The only threat that he carried was a punch. And for the second knockdown against Ngannou, Anthony Joshua had the confidence to leave himself in harm's way past that lazy jab and counter with that right hand. That was the second knockdown was the one that done the damage. Because by the time he got up for the third knockdown, he was completely gone. But it was the difference in the confidence and the mentality that allowed him to come about this physically and technically from a completely different point of view. And that's the massive change, I believe. And yeah, that's the reason why ultimately I believe that, yes, he will beat Daniel Dubois. But at the same time, if Daniel Dubois, as Joe says, lands a Hail Mary, none of us will really be that surprised because it was always a possibility.
For those of us who are of a certain age, right, who followed Mike Tyson from the start, Mike Tyson was knocking out a load of, who the hell are these people? It was that type of situation, okay? But it was the manner in which he was getting his work done. And it was the technique he was showing. Because people say he was a big killer and all. He was a slugger and nothing of the sort. Mike Tyson had fantastic technique when he was a young man, 86 to 89. He had brilliant technique. And that's why he built his legacy, because he had that balance between the power, the speed, the technique and everything. Now, Davison, it seems, I'm not comparing Joshua to Mike Tyson, But even though Joshua's knocked out A. Francis Ngannou or completely dominated Wallin, who he dominated in sparring after and all that stuff, right? Sometimes it's how you get your work done.
Exactly that.
And it was very, very. It's been very, very impressive those last 2 fights, even though the quality is far below Dubois' opposition, which is Jarrell Miller and Turgovich. Nevertheless, those 2 guys, even though they're of a higher caliber, the way in which Dubois has gone about his work is not as impressive to me as Joshua.
Because there's also this discussion at the moment that the last 2 fights that Dubois has had have been better fights, better wins, because he's come through adversity and then got the win. So that makes those better wins than the 2 wins Joshua has had over Ngannou and Wallin, where Joshua made them look easy. But there's this thought process that the Dubois wins are better and say more because he's overcome sort of sticky patches and early, taking a shellacking off Ergovic early and overcoming a mid-round wobble against Miller. That makes those better wins. But, I suppose this is where the nuance comes in, because you've got one guy that blows away his 2 opponents, and we can talk about the levels, and then you've got one guy that kind of struggles for patches and overcomes. What dictates which are the better wins for those reasons? The guy that overcome a struggle, or the guy that made them look easy? There was absolutely no struggle whatsoever.
Well, for me, I think Joshua, personally. You can say what you want about the opponents, and we can ask questions. But what I've seen, and I said it, I think some people are saying are his best days behind him. I think his best days could be well ahead. If he has 2 years left, he could be a kind of dominant next 2 years if he only has 2 years left.
And I think there's also a part of, and I know me and Joe have talked about this before as well, there's a part of Dubois that almost doesn't process, it's like he doesn't feel fear, which is kind of great in one way, but not in another, because that kind of dictates that he may come out all guns blazing. And this is kind of what I think will happen. Dubois will come out, even the fallout from that sit down where he got up, and Ade said that afterwards, Dubois was far more angry that Joshua wasn't. It took Dubois a long time to calm down after that sit down, after Joshua had threatened to put the chair across his face. But there's part of me thinks that Dubois will come out and honestly try and take Joshua's head off. And to me, that will play right into Joshua's hands. I believe Davison would have planned for that. And I believe it will just fall into the hands of Joshua, slipping or ducking off, landing that counter right hand, left hook. And that's all she wrote.
And the uppercut, because of how much Dubois leans over himself.
Comes over his front foot, hands out here.
And he's just asking for it.
The gaps in the defence as well are very worrying.
And I think the way his body structure is, the way his anatomy is, I don't think when I was doing my keys to victory, my little technical breakdown, I was looking at him trying to slip punches, and I was like, he can slip a shot, but his
whole body,
his whole body, he's no balance. It's like he slips one shot and he's like that, and you're like, no wonder he doesn't move his head, because he's probably more safe. He's probably better off just standing and taking the shot than moving, because he's all over the place. At least if he's standing straight up, he can see and he can return fire. Can't do anything when he moves. He's so off balance. We got to give picks. I'm saying Joshua 3 to 7. They're his rounds. He's going to stop Dubois. Lads.
I'm trying to remember what I said in my video. I think about 6, 7, 8 mid rounds. Knockout. I think it'll be. You might see the towel come in. I think Dubois.
Yeah, I wouldn't rule that out either.
I think Dubois goes down. I think he gets hit. I think on this occasion he might get up rather than sit out the count. But I think Joshua, we could see a similar-ish thing to the Ngannou fight where he gets flattened. But I think it'll be a painful night for Dubois.
If they're inside the distance.
Yeah, I think in my own head will happen is Dubois' bravery and gameness will ultimately be his undoing, and he will walk onto something precisely executed by Joshua. You'll probably have seen Joshua do it on the pads with Davison in the dressing room before the fight, and you'll probably see him execute it in the fight, and that'll probably be the end. Saying that, I wouldn't be surprised at all if Joshua ran out a winner on points and kind of kept out away, and Dubois' chin was that good that Joshua couldn't put him away, and then elects to, let's just run this out. I don't see that as being an impossibility. I expect a stoppage, but I don't see that as being out of the way, depending on circumstances.
And I think he'll have a few rough rounds.
Definitely, 100%.
Although I think Joshua's going to win this fight by a knockout, I'm not going to even say that it's not out of the realms of possibility for Dubois to have his moments and to really make you. There wouldn't be I'm going to be watching this fight live, doing a watch along on Saturday, and I fully expect at some point to kind of jump up and say, "Oh, Dubois rocked Joshua."
Oh yeah.
I fully expect that. I'm not expecting a one-sided boom. It's over. See you later.
And like we said before, I think we've all agreed. We've all just said we expect Joshua by stoppage, but I don't think any of us would be absolutely amazed or blown away if Dubois did win by a knockout.
Oh no, Jesus no!
We would all sit there and say that was always a possibility, and it happened.
If Dubois knocks Joshua out, I'd say we will probably all jump up and be like, "Oh well," but then we'll be like, "Oh well," I mean. Yeah, of course,
perfectly feasible. You got a bloke with that amount of power. One little, second of.
If it did happen, though, it would be more Joshua losing the fight than Dubois winning it. It would mean Joshua had made a serious mistake in his game plan and deviated from the plan for that to happen.
Exactly that. I don't think it's going to be a case of Dubois coming in one way, boom, look at me. I think it's just going to be if Joshua's on top, you stayed in the pocket too long, big right hand, it's over. That's how I see it happening if Dubois wins. If Dubois loses, he's still young, he can come back. But if Joshua does lose, say by knockout, surely we really got to ask questions. What next? 34 years old, coming off back of a loss to Daniel Dubois, that would be a hard comeback. A very hard comeback.
If Fury lost a second time to Usyk, which I think he will, if he turns up, which is a big if for me, then I think you would get a sort of Kell Brook Amir Khan scenario where you put the two. It's way past itself.
A bigger Kell Brook Amir Khan. It would still. You probably still could do it at Wembley.
Yeah.
I still think if Joshua did lose, I still think, however the mechanics of that would work, they would 100% there would be a return. Because that would be that is then a massive fight.
Yeah,
that's a very good point.
Yeah,
and every single one of Joshua's rematches have done very good numbers, win or lose. Every single one of them.
Yeah.
Lads, we've just gone over the hour, so I want to leave it there. There's still 81 in the building, and I've been very good. I haven't asked anyone to like the video, but I'm gonna now. So if you haven't already, please do. Yeah, lads, unanimously, we gotta like the video. You gotta get the numbers up. Get those numbers up. Before we finish up, Joe Stunner, Boxing, Lee, Inside the Distance. Have you any closing words? And where can we find you, great men?
What about you, Lee?
You can find me right there, Inside the Distance, at Inside the Distance Boxing on YouTube. That's me. And I just, if I've got anything to add, I just think it's been a while since I've looked forward to genuinely a heavyweight fight, probably as much as I'm looking forward to this. I think this has got all the ingredients for just ultimate drama and excitement.
I think you summed it up best, Mr. Joe Stunner. Boxing, 5K on the way.
I don't know. I've just had a look and I've lost a few subscribers, so I must have said something offensive. But I'm looking forward to this one. Yeah, this is a good one. It's going to be. When you said, you think it might go the distance, yeah, okay, I know what you're getting at, but I want to see some action. I want to see where it goes. I want to see crash, bang, wallop.
That's
what we pay the admission for.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, or watch it by other means. I mean, I watched that bloody Belanga Canelo card, and I watched that using other means. I didn't pay a penny. I still wanted my bloody money back. What a disgrace that was. But this one, good card.
Good card. Lads, we will probably reconvene post-fight and have a chat, if it's all good with you, and we can kind of assess and say we were all right, or we all messed that up big time. But
being wrong is part of the fun. When you get it wrong and you think, oh, Dubois won in 2 rounds, you think, Jesus Christ, I didn't see that coming. Neither did anyone else. But that's why we love the sport.
You can only use boxing logic, can't you?
Yeah.
And upsets are flipping great. I love them. Who doesn't love a good upset? It's like, imagine a sport where the people predicting are so happy to be wrong. I love it.
Brilliant. That's why we love it.
That's why we love boxing, and lads, we are going to love Saturday night. This is the first of many lives we'll do this week, and we are going to have a great time previewing and talk about these fights. But for now, people, we're going to leave you. I hope you all enjoyed it. For the few people still left in the building, smash the like button. And lads, until next time, peace, everybody.
Peace.